Welcome back, welcome back. It's so good to see you again. Tonight we're going to be talking about story. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. I'm not a master of story, but this channel is all about learning new things, and that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to share the knowledge that I have with you, and then in future episodes on this topic, we're going to expand on that knowledge and learn together. Stories have the ability to make us laugh, to make us cry, to make us feel fear, or to feel like we can overcome anything. And so the art of telling a good story is going to be one of the key ingredients in making media that resonates with people. So I'm going to start with the basics of what I know, and we're going to work our way out from there. Now, the fun thing about stories is that they don't need to be told from beginning to end. Sometimes you can start with the end of a story, and that's what I'm going to do here tonight. In the end, I went on to take a job that used math every day that allowed me to be an artist, and that path eventually led to me making this YouTube channel so I could be here with you today talking about stories. While I was going to school in San Francisco, I got to take a class on mythology, and the reason we learn mythology is because it's full of great stories, and all those stories follow a classic pattern. We call this pattern the hero's journey. So what is the hero's journey? Well, think of Perseus, who had to fight the Medusa to remove her head so that he could go and defeat the Kraken. That is a hero's journey. You have Perseus, who started out the son of a god, had to travel to faraway lands, defeat some mythical beast, so that he could return home and defeat his greatest challenge. For some reason, that hero has to leave their home, their comfort, and head out on a great quest. Bilbo Baggins is another great representation of that. Now, along the way, the hero has to overcome some kind of challenge or multiple challenges, and then in the end, the hero overcomes those challenges, and then perhaps it's his greatest challenge, which in the case of Bilbo was the dragon, and then gets to return home. So we can break this down even further into just conflict resolution. There is some conflict, and that conflict must be resolved. I had the privilege of attending a storytelling conference held by Pixar Studios while I was living in LA, and Andrew Stanton was one of the presenters. And I brought this up in a previous video, but Andrew tells a fantastic joke, which I'm not going to share with you here. It's called the goat joke. Go look it up. A couple of things I got out of that presentation was that you should always know your punchline, which means you know the answer to the problem, and then you get your audience to solve the problem. So you tell them, what's 2 plus 2? And you know the answer is 4, but you're waiting for them to solve that problem. Human beings by nature are problem solvers. So let's take this into a simplified version. Let's say we're going to make an animation. And the hero in our animation is going to be a young child, and the conflict this child is going to face is that there is a piece of candy sitting on a counter. Now you got a short kid though, and the candy is way up there. So the problem is how to get the candy. Now the kid has to find a solution. Now in my little son's case, that solution would be walking over, grabbing a stool, and dragging it over to the counter so that he could climb up and grab that piece of candy. That's a really simple story, really simple conflict, and really simple resolution. So let's look at a more complicated example. The movie Star Wars, right? Probably one of the greatest movies ever made. The original Star Wars made in the 70s. We had a hero. The hero was Luke Skywalker. And in the story, Luke had to overcome 3 major conflicts, or even types of conflict. One is he had a physical conflict, he also had a mental conflict, and he had a spiritual conflict. So the physical conflict. Luke's in danger. He doesn't know his parents. He's being raised by his aunt and uncle who are suddenly murdered by stormtroopers. So Luke is forced to flee the planet and go off and with Obi-Wan Kenobi and join the rebellion. So then Luke also has a mental conflict. A few mental conflicts, actually. He wants to be more than he is. He's this young guy stuck in the desert, living with his aunt and uncle, farming moisture. And he wants to go off and be an X-Wing pilot, join the rebellion, hang out in space, go to space bars, all that cool stuff. And then he has a spiritual conflict, which is that he just realized he's a Jedi. He has the Force, he's got this lightsaber, so he's building up all this spiritual conflict as well. Now the cool thing about Star Wars is all that conflict is resolved in like the last few minutes of the film. So there's the scene, Luke is cruising through the little valley in the Death Star, and he's got to hit this tiny target, and he's finally flying an X-Wing, and he's off this crummy planet, and then all of a sudden Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice comes in his head, and it's like, use the Force, Luke. And so Luke turns off his tracker, and he cruises in there, and he fires, and boom! Death Star explodes. Wow. So all the conflicts resolved all at once. The whole movie's been building up to this one moment, and then finally in that last second that everything happens and Luke becomes a hero and a Jedi and the galaxy is saved. So a good story, a story that resonates with us, evokes emotion. It invokes our problem-solving mind, our imagination. And this is why story is so important and why you find it in everything. And my daughter likes to sing songs, and she often comes to me with these songs that are essentially like day, night, night is right, and she's getting good at rhyming, the words and getting a nice pattern down and everything. It's that story part that she's trying to work on now, and that is getting better. And so we had this discussion one day about, is there story in song? And to make a point, I started singing Let It Go. And for any of you that have kids, you might have this song memorized, but let me just refresh you a little bit. Snow blows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. So what's going on here? Elsa is feeling isolated. She's out in the middle of the night in this snowy mountainous landscape all alone. So now we have our hero, and we have our first conflict. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in, heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. So she was holding all this stuff inside of her, all this conflict, and it was burning. It was burning her up. It was building up inside of her, and she's come to this realization in this moment that she doesn't need to feel that conflict anymore. Everybody knows. They know she has ice powers. So of course she decides to let it go, can't hold it back anymore. Anyways, that's enough of that. Nobody wants to hear me singing. The point is, the story is there embedded in the song, and along with the images, you get this very strong, emotional response. In some cases, it might be a strong dislike for the movie Frozen, but in other cases, you might feel empowered by this moment where Elsa lets it all go. Alright, everybody, I'm going to tell you one more story, then I'm out of here, I promise. This is one of my personal stories. So back in high school, I was a punk. When I looked around, I couldn't really find anywhere to fit in. I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know why I was learning this stuff. And one of my worst classes was algebra. I had this teacher, and I'm going to call her Miss W, because listen, teachers are good. They work hard, they don't get paid very much. I mean her, no disrespect. And Miss W was a character in her own right. She had these thin legs and a large body, and she used to keep these fake nails like really long and covered in gems and things. So I failed algebra the first time I took it, and the second time I was thankful enough to get a different teacher and managed to get by. It wasn't that I didn't like it or I couldn't do it. I actually used to get all the problems right. I just didn't want to memorize the formulas because I didn't know why you had to do that, and so I failed. One class I did love, however, was art. So I joined the art club. And every year the art club had the privilege of painting all the windows for the holidays. And Christmas was the best. That was like the finale of the year. You got to do Christmas. Now, growing up in a sort of rural area, I used to like to venture off to the city quite often. I liked experiencing the sights and sounds and atmosphere and just watching people. Christmas time was one of the most beautiful, like my favorite time to visit the city, but but also like one of the worst because it was really cold down there and the wind used to just cut through there like a knife and freeze you. Since I was people watching, I noticed everybody, and so I would notice the homeless people huddled up against the buildings, just freezing, covered in newspaper. And in stark contrast, you'd see all these happy families and such walking out of the stores with their shopping bags laden with goods. And the two worlds just never seemed to cross. The shoppers just really didn't want to see this unfortunate truth. And so I thought to myself, well, this year I'm going to do something good. I'm going to paint this scene. I'm going to make people aware of this, and I'm going to paint this scene up on the window of the high school. It's going to be fantastic. So I got all my stuff together, and everybody there painting Santa Claus and Rudolph and elves and Christmas trees and all these wonderful things. And there it is. I paint my wall and I paint my homeless person covered in newspaper with maybe a bottle of whiskey or something next to him, and all these happy shoppers walking past with bags full of stuff. And I stayed late that night just to put in those final touches to get the label on that whiskey bottle, And so the next morning I was jazzed. I wanted to come in and I was going to see the impact that this fine work of art had on all my fellow students. And they'd all applaud and just, wonderful, wonderful. Instead, I was greeted with this scene. Miss W standing there, just glaring at my painting. And this smirk came across her face, and she reached up with that great claw and she scratched right down the center of my painting. Now at this point, obviously, I was filled with rage, and I had to do something. But at the same time, I was filled with hopelessness because I'm just a student, just a kid in this school, and I'm gonna get kicked out or something if I confront this woman. But I couldn't stand it. So I rushed up to her, and I looked her straight in the face, and I said to her, "How dare you?" And she just looked back at me, and she smiled, that evil, smirking, grin smile thing, and she turned away, and as if I had said nothing. It's the worst possible insult. Now the reason I'm telling you this story is because I want you to know that conflicts are not always immediately resolved in the story. Now sometimes it takes a lifetime to resolve all those little conflicts. Sometimes they're never resolved with like a happy ending. But the point is, you hang in there. You stay strong because you know that final boss awaits. That one thing, that goal that you need to reach, or that thing that you need to defeat, and you stay strong so you can reach that goal. So in my story, I went on to get a job in video games where I use math every day, and I get to do art every day, and I get the opportunity to sit here with you today on this YouTube channel talking about story. Alright everybody, I really hope that was helpful to you in some way. I enjoyed this time. I enjoy talking about story. I'd like to come back and do some more of that. I want to talk about character development because the two of those things are just tied together. But I got one more challenge for you. Now I tried this on my Facebook group, couldn't get enough people involved. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to organically create an open source, a crowdsourced story. You and me in the comments below. I am going to leave a comment, I'm going to pin it, and I'm going to start a story. One sentence. And then you come at me with one more sentence. And we go on and on and on like that until we reach the final boss and we defeat it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to make a really good story, I guarantee. I'll just build up the courage. It's okay. I'm not going to judge if anybody laughs. I'll be like, how dare you? One rule though, just keep it nice. I mean, no stuff. This is a friendly, we're friendly here. We're all good friends. So I trust that you're going to keep it nice. I'm not worried. It's going to be great. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like down below. Leave that comment or other comments about the content or whatever you want to, just comment down below. You hit the subscribe thing. I mean, do all that stuff. It means a lot to me. It really helps me out and helps more people see this content. So thanks again for joining me. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye bye.